Okay guys, so this week we're going over the concept of pivoting, body shifting, or in Japanese it's called tai sabaki. It's different ways to maneuver your body depending on your feet or your hips or your shoulders or any other joint in your body to take an advantageous position over your opponents.
First, we're going to kind of talk about using the hanchi step to kind of close the distance between you and your opponent. So that's part of the reason why I'm kind of an advocate of shifting your whole body forward before turning it back out. It makes sense, like if they're doing something like arm dragging you don't want them to pull on you and you to do this, remember, right? You want to close that distance as much as possible, because if you just close like this, you're giving them a lot of space where they can move in on you, punch you, kick you, whatever, right? So if you do this and instead you cross over, allow yourself to kind of like fall into your opponent, you know, landing that, you use this to kind of like subtly be here, and then you can kind of land forward into a front stance, right? So using this to kind of pivot and like rotating and pivoting your foot back out and then in, you can also move around them if you do it fast enough, right? So if he's arm dragging me this way and I come here versus trying to shuffle step, it's a lot quicker with the hanchi.
That also allows you to push off of that
yeah,
leg,
so
right?
Here I can be explosive and come that way because it gives me kind of like a center line this way versus just coming here and shuffling your steps. I mean, here you're firm, but you don't have a lot else you can do. It takes so much time. So I allow you to pull me. I use that to fall into you, push you, right? Versus just shuffling with you and being in the same spot.
So another pivoting motion in a kata is pina and shodan. When you see this, where you're coiling down in one spot, rather than stepping into it, you're literally just coiling in or shifting in. It's when somebody's pushing into you, you don't always want to push back. You see this all the time when people are just muscling in technique, right? Or you also don't want to have to just step back. But if your entire goal is to let them close the distance or you close the distance, it would make sense for you to coil into where you already are. So if I'm here, I can coil this way and I can take them down, rather than taking the extra step to do this and then having to go, or trying to muscle him and trying to do this and trying to go. The same thing happens from a distance too. If he throws a punch, instead of going here or going forward, if I can just stay where I am, what allows him to fall into where I want him to go, right? So I can take it down that way.
One of the other things to keep in mind is if it's always good to try to synchronize your appendages when you're moving. It helps the weighting effect of your body and that sort of thing. It's just more advantageous, right? So if I'm trying to open him up this way, like actually moving my foot at the same time versus just pushing out is actually pretty important, right? Like I don't have to step. We're talking about the pivoting thing. So doing this at the same time to create the pull is pretty important, right? Versus pulling here and then just trying to do this thing, right? So grabbing, turning, pivoting at the same exact time, right? So it's a subtle thing, but it makes the world of difference, because that whole thing is what makes your body heavy, right? We talked a lot in the past about dead weighting and stuff like that. Well, you can't dead weight by just pulling on the person right here and being firm. Pivoting your foot allows your center to drop. Well, that screw down motion, right? So this makes my body heavy. Otherwise, I'm just pushing here, pulling here, and he can pull up against that pretty easily. But if I sink here and drive up like that, it's a whole different kind of movement, right?
That makes sense, because you're making your transition smoother.
Right.
Because if you did like a two-step motion, step, pull, then you could counter my step already.
Right, because you step.
And you're right here.
Yeah.
But if I was able to move everything at the same time, then
there's so much weight pulling them down in that area. Like you can't really you can't self-right yourself.
That makes sense.
Right. So that's pretty important, and that's with all the movements, right? Like when you're doing, even if I'm coming here, doing this number, I mean, pulling down this way versus here pulling and then trying to move, right? So when I do that, I'm dragging this way and then leaning also at the same time. That makes my body kind of do that naturally, without me having to go like, okay, so I'm gonna drag across, I'm gonna turn my thing, and then I'm gonna put my head here. I just do that pivot. This pivoting makes my body kind of collapse this way, so then I just rest on him. and then I can walk out, right? And that's pretty good because then he's got to do a lot of work to try to get my back and run up, and I can sit and just put all my weight on him, or I can do this number and just come in, elbow him, turn all the way around, take his back, elbow him that way.
Like you were saying before, it's
really this kind of an exaggerated motion of that. Yeah.
So just keep in mind, body shifting happens on all three planes. So you can shift forward, back, side, side, but also don't forget to go up and down as well. So scooping underneath your opponent or going on top of your opponent is very critical in defeating them or controlling the confrontation, right? So a lot of the go-tos is going to the head or pushing their shoulders down. So we can be shifting here, but if I feel like his center is off, then it makes sense for me to start pulling down and then climb on top of him. The same thing is shifting from underneath, right? So I need to be able to scoop up underneath him as well. And these will allow you to take do takedowns, leg drags, ankle picks and stuff like that, single legs. Just something to keep in mind.
You know, if you think about it we always talk about screwing down. If you really think about it, like internalize that, then that truly is what it becomes, right? Because then, then that motion of you, like you're literally like saying like I'm going, like you're talking about like receiving the weight, right? I'm going to receive his weight like that. If you're pushing on, then I'm allowing this to happen in order to like explode into a different plane, right? A different angle. So it makes a lot of sense. Rotating into or under the weight versus just collapsing under it, or allowing them to push on you, right? Like you create the balance there.
Definitely interesting. So pivoting actually is pretty common in martial arts. It's just it goes away or goes to the wayside when you don't have to worry about yourself, your health, or your life if your life isn't on the line, right? If you had weapons training, then you'll see a lot of people, they do a lot of pivoting, right? So if I have a knife, like I'm trying to stab him, he would have to do this so that he doesn't literally get stabbed in the stomach. If you train karate with the sense that everything that's coming at you is a deadly weapon, then you're going to start to see the pivoting more often. You're going to start to have to like dodge things in very awkward positions, right?
Yeah, it's what makes your katas come out while you fight and spar. Because if you pivot, if I'm pivoting the punch this way, all these things you start becoming more connected, right? Because you're having to move around your opponent and stuff like that. It's different. Alright, so getting smashed up against the wall is kind of a bummer. But so remembering to like shift your hips out and pivoting is really important. Here, one of the big things is like you're pivoting on your heel to kind of slide yourself out and be able to like shuck somebody's arm up and over. What you want to do is if you're able to create some kind of a frame first and not get smacked in the face at the same time, then here it makes it a lot easier for me to pivot versus allowing him to smash me up. You can still do it, but it's a lot more work. You need to like cross face or something to get to be able to do this number. So once you pivot, you can pivot any kind of way you want. So you have to think like you can pivot one way in order to pivot the other way, right? It's all about shifting his body. So don't always think about it shifting your body. You're either shifting your body away from like, so it's just pressure, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to shift my weight away from his pressure to let his weight go that way, you know, or the opposite way. So it's good to think not only that you're doing this. So a lot of times when I think about pivoting and creating a frame, I think like this is a barrier, And everything I do is to move my body away from this aggressor. So it's an important kind of thing to like keep in mind versus just struggling and constantly thinking like, well, I'm pushing, I'm trying to push him off or push him here. No, just create a frame. If you're able to strike, to create like a, just engage the mind a little bit and then pivot using your heel to kind of get away from that.
So one last thing, there's a difference between heel pivoting and ball of the foot pivoting, right? So if you're pivoting on the heel or your feet, it's to keep your spine erect. So if I'm pivoting here, everything is kind of balancing on my heels. Whereas if I'm on the ball of my feet, I kind of have to like keep myself upward, right?
Yeah.
So that's very important because it's most likely you want to be able to pivot on the heels to do different types of angular changes, right? But don't think of it as exclusively one or the other, because after you do a heel pivot, most likely you're going to transfer to the ball of the foot, because now you can start pushing off of the feet. So one thing to keep in mind, if I were to try to drag him to me, I need to, like we were talking about earlier, pivot on my heels, because it's kind of like opening a gate in my hips, so that it allows this energy or his force to go this way if I'm dragging like this. But once he gets past a certain threshold, I need to shift to the ball of my foot, and now I can go through, right? So it's, you guys see this in Pina Sholan a lot. Here, right? I'm rotating on the ball of my foot so that my spine is erect. I rotate, and then it shifts to here. The same thing happens here. I rotate. But once I get to here, ball of the foot, I can take him down.
It's like the important thing to recognize here is that that pivot is what's allowing like his whole body to pull me in that direction versus him just doing the same thing without pivoting and trying to muscle me that way. Like you can't do it. It doesn't work.
My feet are facing
Right,
here,
yeah,
and my
like,
body's on
that's
this
what
side.
happened, yeah.
And if you do it on the ball of the foot, then it will require multiple steps to do that. So this is the most efficient way, and also my energy is going to where my toes are going to point, right? If I pivot on the balls of my foot, my energy is going here. So I'm sitting back onto it. Whereas if I'm trying to pull him this way, it makes sense for me to go like that. The only other time that you would go straight to the ball of the foot pivot is either a throw, like a vicious throw, like over the shoulder, or you're trying to change directions midair, right? So if I were to do a shoulder throw here, I can't do it like this. I would have to ball the foot here. So it's kind of like, if you can't do the full rotation and you need to jump to it, most likely it's going to be a ball of the foot.
Exactly. Yeah, because you have to get light. So you want to think like ball of foot pivoting requires you to get light. You do it also when you're getting ready to throw like a spinning hook kick, right? You're pivoting, so you're getting light. You know, you kind of like lift up a little bit.
Yeah.
Same thing if you skip into a roundhouse or even roundhouse, you kind of get light, right? That's that same pivot, right? You're not going to throw it on your heel or something, right? So it's there in all those things, and like those real weighted throws, you have to get light because you're trying to drop into their space versus becoming like a pendulum and swinging them around you, right? So if you think like as like the heel pivot, it's more like a pendulum, right? Because even like let's say I can't get this throw off because Michael's too good, and I can't get this throw off, right? But I'm losing my balance. I know right here, even though Michael has like the distinct advantage, I know I anchor here, and I spin hard, and I fall, and I just throw up. Michael's gonna go over me, and I'm gonna be in the advantage now. Because Michael right here would probably try to like push me over, trip me this way, but I can just literally fall and just rotate hard, letting my body fall through it, and it's going to launch Michael in that other direction. So that's an important thing, which it's all like these parts, like the forms and the katas, I feel really show you a lot of like transitional stuff.
I was thinking about that too, because if you think about the Okinawan sumo, It's from a clinch, so it has to be heel pivots, right? So if we're like they grab the belt here, if you grab the belt and they're playing like this, there's no way I can do that.
Yeah, no.
Right? Everything has to be from here.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's all.
And I'm just trying to move your hip with my hip. It's just steering a big wheel. So, like if you look at the origins of karate, like these grappling arts are all in there. So it makes sense that you need to spend some time and figure out these mechanics of the pivots, shifting your body, because that's the most efficient way to take an opponent down in a drag situation.
Yeah, and remember, like subtly, like your body's kind of like falling into it. Like you have to get comfortable with falling, like allowing yourself to become loose, not being super tight all the time, right? It's super important, you know, like being able to spin here, coming loose, and being able to explode forward. And step into like a front stance, stepping hard into it.
The pendulum analogy is a really good thing because it's not. I'm not trying to lift you up.
Right.
No. I'm trying to swing you.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah. So it's just my body, your body weight, my body weight, and I go this way. I put something out, and then boom, it just goes wins the person.
Cool, so that was a good discussion on body shifting, pivoting, heel of the foot, ball of the foot, things to think about, things to try out with your compliant partner, and also in like a full resistance takeaway situation. But always work progressing upward, right?
Yeah, and like that kind of stuff, like it works really well, but you have to keep in mind that when you're doing that kind of stuff, you're throwing your weight around and you're throwing their weight around. So I mean, the idea is to hurt people, right? To like, you know, with the least amount of effort. So you need to be very safe.
Yeah, it's hard to do these 100%, but kindly 100%.
Yeah, kindly. So do you have a crash pad? Use a crash pad?
Yeah, definitely.